Adam Bennett's life had always been a balancing act on a razor's edge. A 6-year-old daughter who depended on him completely. Bills that never stopped arriving. A job that demanded creativity he barely had time to give. His days were a constant series of compromises, sleep cut short, meals rushed, dreams postponed. And yet he had survived. Somehow he had survived. Monday morning had started like any other, though that illusion would crumble the moment he stepped off the elevator on the 36th floor. The air smelled faintly of expensive coffee and polished wood. The office was mostly empty, the hum of computers and the occasional tap of a keyboard the only acknowledgement of life. He had been summoned. No explanation, just a calendar notification with Luna Sterling's name stamped in bold at the top. Luna Sterling. Vice President. The kind of person whose reputation preceded her like a shadow, sharp, powerful, and utterly untouchable. Adam had taken a deep breath, adjusted his tie, the only one left that still fit, and walked toward the conference room. He barely noticed the soft click of his dress shoes against the polished marble as he collided with a figure coming the other way. A leather portfolio slipped from her hands, scattering papers across the floor. Without thinking, Adam dropped to his knees and began gathering the documents. His hand brushed against hers as she reached for the same folder. He looked up. Her eyes were cool, calculating, but behind that, something else flickered. Recognition. Assessment. Luna Sterling herself, as if the universe had conspired to place him in her path for a reason he could not yet understand. "Thank you," she said curtly without warmth. Adam shook his head. "It's fine. I'm just returning what isn't mine." She raised an eyebrow as if intrigued by his honesty. Then, almost imperceptibly, she noted his composure, his ease under scrutiny, and filed it away in her mind. The envelope he noticed on the floor didn't go unnoticed by Luna either. Cream-colored, embossed, half-hidden beneath a filing cabinet. He picked it up and jogged after her, offering it as if it were fragile glass. She took it with a faint nod, slipped 5 crisp $100 bills into it and held it toward him. Adam stared. "I don't need. I'm just returning this." Luna's eyes narrowed slightly, the puzzle unspoken in their depths. He refused the payment, walked away and left her standing there, money still in hand, pondering the man who had just walked past temptation. 7 days later the email arrived. Summons, 36th floor, 9 a.m. Luna Sterling. No explanation. No context. Just her name. Adam spent the night reviewing his worn-out suit in the mirror, running through every possible scenario. Was he in trouble? Was this a firing, a warning, or something worse? Nothing in his life had prepared him for what awaited him the next morning. The conference room smelled faintly of expensive leather and faint citrus polish. Luna sat at the head of the long table, posture perfect, expression unreadable. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Adam Bennett," she began without preamble, "you are competent, reliable, and unremarkable." His stomach tightened. Unremarkable? Was that an insult? She continued, her tone matter-of-fact. "I need you to do something for me. Not for the company, not for a promotion. For me. Personal. Immediate. And unusual." Adam shifted in his chair. His mind raced. Unusual? Unsettling? Dangerous? "I need you to pretend to be my husband," she said carefully as though pronouncing a sacred word. "For 1 year." He blinked. The words felt unreal, surreal, like something he might read in a novel, but never in the fluorescent-lit world of corporate offices. "So, we're sharing a bed?" he asked, half joking, half serious. Her gaze didn't flinch. "Only when necessary. Only to convince those who need convincing." The terms were simple on the surface, terrifying underneath. Move into her penthouse, attend family dinners, pose for photographs, interact convincingly with her brother and the board, all to satisfy a clause in her father's will. The company could not be inherited unless Luna was married before her 30th birthday. Adam swallowed. His mind flashed to his daughter, to the piles of bills, to the cramped apartment they barely called home. Luna's offer wasn't just unusual, it was life-changing. Pay off $120,000 in medical debt, double his salary, provide health insurance, secure a college fund for his daughter. In exchange, this bizarre, intimate masquerade. He asked for 24 hours. She agreed, leaving him with a thick folder of legal language he barely understood. That night, Adam sat in his daughter's room, watching her chest rise and fall, her small body curled under a thin blanket. What kind of father puts his child through poverty when a lifeline could be extended, even if it came at the cost of dignity? The next morning he texted Luna. He would do it, on one condition. His daughter remained untouched by publicity or corporate games. The contract was signed 3 days later in a downtown lawyer's office. Cold, precise, unemotional. A business transaction, nothing more. He moved in on a Friday. The penthouse was immaculate, staged to perfection. Every surface gleamed, every corner measured, every item placed with intention. He felt like an intruder in someone else's curated life. The first family dinner was tense. Derek, her brother, observed him like a hawk. Adam's role was clear, silent, respectful, convincing. Luna sat beside him, guiding the performance with the lightest touch of a hand. Derek watched, unconvinced. Back at the penthouse, Adam lay awake in the guest room, pondering the months ahead. Every glance, every word, every gesture would be a calculation. He had accepted the contract, but the price was not yet known. The following week, a citywide blackout struck. The penthouse plunged into darkness. Luna appeared, holding her phone like a candle. Adam poured 2 glasses of wine. They sat on opposite ends of the couch in silence. For the first time, Luna spoke not as a vice president, but as a human. She asked him why he had agreed. He spoke of his daughter, the fear of inadequacy, and the need to secure a future. She admitted her own fears, the constant pressure, her father's impossible will, the looming presence of Derek. Hours passed. Lights flickered back. The intimacy of shared vulnerability hung in the air like electricity. The line between contract and connection blurred ever so slightly. 2 weeks later, the couple attended a second family dinner, this time at a downtown restaurant with white-gloved waiters and menus without prices. Derek's eyes, sharp and skeptical, followed Adam and Luna. Every word, every touch, carefully measured. Luna's hand briefly touched Adam's. The touch lingered in memory longer than intended. On the drive home, neither spoke. The silence was heavy, yet comfortable, a strange acknowledgement of what was developing between them beyond the contract. Adam returned to his old apartment on weekends, the only hours that felt real. Luna, surprisingly, expressed interest in seeing his daughter in the park. Adam hesitated, then agreed. Her warmth around his child was genuine, unscripted. He noticed nuances he hadn't anticipated, the way she laughed, the care in her eyes. Moments like these were not in the contract, but they were real and dangerous. By the end of part 1, Adam lay in the guest room of the penthouse, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the next 12 months would break him, or transform him. One thing was certain, the year ahead would not just test their ability to act, but their capacity to survive and perhaps to trust each other in ways neither had expected. The penthouse was more than just a home. It was a glass and steel monument to wealth, ambition, and the kind of life Adam Bennett had never imagined he'd touch, let alone inhabit. Every surface gleamed as if it had been polished by invisible hands. Every piece of furniture was a statement, not for comfort but for display. He felt conspicuously small, as though he had been placed there to admire it and nothing else. Adam set his bags down in the guest room, the one corner of the penthouse that would belong to him for the next 12 months. The walls were pale gray, the bed impossibly large, the view overlooking the city skyline both breathtaking and intimidating. He took a slow breath, letting the weight of the contract settle over him. "This is it," he muttered to himself. "Your life just changed." He hadn't even unpacked before the first set of rules was repeated. Luna appeared in the doorway, her posture precise, her expression unreadable. "Remember," she said, "boundaries. No personal questions beyond the contract, no expectations. We are partners in this performance. Nothing more." Adam nodded, though a part of him already wondered how long it would be before the lines blurred. The first week in the penthouse was an exercise in discipline and patience. Luna left early each morning, returning late each night. Their interactions were limited to logistical necessities, breakfast arrangements, occasional dinners, passing in the hallway. Words were measured, gestures minimal. Adam often sat alone on the oversized couch, staring at the floor-to-ceiling windows, feeling the city hum beneath him. It was luxurious, yes, but it was also isolating. Weekends were worse. He returned to his daughter's apartment, relishing the normalcy, the laughter, the chaos of small toys scattered across the floor. But leaving the penthouse felt like stepping out of one world and into another entirely. He was living a life he had never earned, yet the price was being paid in invisible increments: constant observation, perpetual performance, and the looming figure of Derek Sterling. Derek. The name alone carried tension. Adam had seen him once at the first family dinner, a man whose smile never reached his eyes, whose hands carried the subtle weight of threats. He watched Adam and Luna with the scrutiny of a predator. Adam had learned quickly that Derek would never be satisfied with the contract marriage at face value. The second week brought a challenge he hadn't anticipated. Another family dinner, this time downtown at a restaurant of silent elegance. White gloves, muted conversation, discreet glances. Luna instructed him in the car ride there, her voice low but firm. "We need to be convincing. Derek watches everything." Adam nodded, repeating the lines in his mind like a mantra. He had become a student in the art of acting married, learning how to hold a hand naturally, how to sit close without seeming rehearsed, how to react with subtle emotion that appeared authentic to an observer. The evening began smoothly. Derek was punctual, flanked by two older board members who watched like hawks. Luna, in a black dress that fit her like armor, exuded an effortless poise. Adam, in his best suit, felt the eyes on him as if they were physical pressure. Every glance, every gesture, every syllable of conversation became part of the act. "Married life treating you well?" Derek asked, his tone casual but his gaze sharp. "Adjusting," Luna replied, her hand resting lightly on Adam's for a fleeting second. A touch meant to convey intimacy, yet rehearsed. Derek's eyes lingered, suspicious. Adam answered questions with care, his words chosen to maintain the illusion. Every time Luna's hand brushed his or their eyes met, he felt an unfamiliar warmth, a thrill of connection, confusing in its intensity, distracting him from the meticulous performance required. By the time dessert arrived, Adam's jaw ached from clenching it in concentration. Derek said nothing more, but Adam sensed that observation had shifted from curiosity to silent plotting. Back at the penthouse, the silence was heavy. Luna poured herself a glass of wine, staring out at the city lights. Adam perched on the couch, uncertain whether to speak. Finally, he ventured, "Do you think Derek believes us?" Luna's voice was soft, rare in its vulnerability. "He never believes. That's why we have to be perfect. Every meal, every interaction. He watches for flaws. He looks for lies." Adam exhaled slowly. Perfect, flawless, human, impossible. And yet, somehow they had to manage it. The following days were a routine of performance and observation. Each interaction was scripted in subtle ways. Morning coffee, the passing of the elevator, shared meals. Luna's world was precise, orderly, and carefully monitored. Adam's world, filled with small chaotic moments with his daughter, felt like a distant memory. The lines between the two lives were beginning to blur, and he wasn't sure if he could keep them separate much longer. One evening, the city streets below thrummed with life while Adam found himself pacing the living room. Luna emerged from her office, her hair pulled back casually, her posture less rigid. She carried 2 cups of tea. She set one in front of him, sitting across the room. "You're restless," she said. "I'm thinking," Adam replied. "Thinking about how long we can keep this up without breaking." Luna's lips curved slightly, a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's not just about keeping it up. It's about surviving. Derek wants to expose us. The board is watching. And every day, every mistake, every hesitation could be a weapon." Adam sipped his tea, letting the warmth spread. "And if we survive?" She tilted her head, studying him as if weighing the weight of his words. "Then maybe we redefine what survival looks like. Maybe it's not just enduring. Maybe it's learning how to trust each other in ways neither of us anticipated." The words hung in the air, charged with a tension neither had permission to explore. And yet, they lingered, promising that beneath the surface of contracts and corporate games, something human, something fragile, something dangerously close to real, was taking root. The weekend arrived, and Adam returned to his daughter's apartment. Luna surprised him by asking to come along. She wanted to see his life outside the penthouse, the life he lived not as a contract husband but as a father. Adam hesitated, then agreed. In the park, he watched Luna interact with his daughter. She crouched to speak at eye level, listened with genuine interest, laughed softly at her jokes. Adam noticed something shift, a softness, a vulnerability not permitted in the office. His daughter looked at her, curious and trusting. "Is she your friend?" she asked. Adam nodded. "Yes, a very special friend." Later, walking along the pond while his daughter ran ahead, Luna asked quietly, "Does she know?" Adam shook his head. "Nothing. And it stays that way. She deserves normal." Luna's gaze lingered on his daughter, thoughtful. "You've done an amazing job." Adam shrugged, though his chest tightened. "She's lucky. But I'm the one who's lucky." The days that followed saw small cracks in the walls they had built around themselves. Luna began to linger in the living room for a few extra minutes in the mornings. Adam began to notice small gestures, a softened tone, a careful smile. Neither admitted it aloud, but the line between performance and reality blurred imperceptibly. By the end of part 2, Adam understood that this 12-month contract was more than a simple business arrangement. It was a test of endurance, a performance of intimacy, a delicate dance of power and vulnerability. Every glance, every word, every gesture mattered. And at the center of it all, he realized, was a woman who commanded respect, feared nothing, and despite all appearances, was capable of seeing him in ways no one else had. The real challenge, Adam knew, would be surviving Derek's scrutiny while navigating this dangerous new life, and resisting the growing pull of something he wasn't allowed to want. The city groaned under the weight of the approaching storm. Dark clouds rolled across the skyline, blotting out the glow of streetlights and neon signs. Adam Bennett stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in the penthouse, watching as the wind whipped the streets below. The penthouse, so pristine and orderly, felt suddenly fragile in the face of nature's force. Luna Sterling appeared behind him, carrying a small tray with 2 cups of tea. Her hair had escaped its usual tight bun, cascading loosely over her shoulders. She looked almost human, vulnerable, unguarded, a stark contrast to the powerful, controlled executive he knew at the office. "The storm's going to be bad," she said softly. "They're predicting city-wide outages." Adam nodded. "Good thing we're in the penthouse. We're insulated from chaos, mostly." He offered her a small, wry smile. Luna didn't return it. Instead, she set the tray down and gazed out at the darkened horizon. "Mostly isn't enough," she said. "We need to be prepared." The power flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. The penthouse was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the occasional flash of lightning outside. Adam felt a familiar tension rise, his pulse quickened. "Well," he said, trying to keep his tone light, "looks like we're off the grid." Luna didn't laugh. Instead, she reached for her phone, using it as a flashlight to navigate to the kitchen. "Candles," she muttered. "They're in the cabinet." Together, they lit several candles, the soft flickering light casting shadows across the polished surfaces. The penthouse, usually so sharp and intimidating, now seemed intimate, almost cozy. Adam found himself acutely aware of the space between them. "You should probably stay," Luna said quietly. Her eyes didn't meet his. "The storm could get worse and it's not safe for you to leave." Adam hesitated. He had lived alone with his daughter for 3 years. Safety was something he had learned to control, or at least attempt to control. But here, in Luna's world of glass and steel, he was suddenly powerless. "All right," he said finally. "I'll stay." They settled on the couch, keeping a safe distance at first. The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of rain lashing against the windows and distant thunder. Adam tried to focus on something mundane, work, emails, the contract, but the intimacy of the moment kept creeping in, uninvited and undeniable. Luna broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder if all of this, is worth it?" Her voice was soft, almost tentative. Adam looked at her. "You mean the contract, the company, the charade?" She nodded. "Yes, all of it. Sometimes I think I'm just playing a role I didn't audition for." He considered her words carefully. He knew her world was ruthless, controlled by rules he couldn't begin to imagine. Yet here, in the shadows of her penthouse, she was simply human. "I don't know if it's worth it," he admitted. "But I do know this, I've learned more about people in these few weeks than I ever thought I would. And maybe it's not about the role. Maybe it's about the choices we make within it." She turned her head to look at him, her expression unreadable. The candlelight caught the edges of her face, softening the sharp lines he had come to associate with authority and power. "You're wise for someone who didn't grow up in this world," she said. Adam smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just desperate enough to figure it out." Another flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a low rumble of thunder that shook the penthouse. Luna instinctively moved closer, her shoulder brushing against his. Neither of them pulled away. Hours passed. The storm intensified. Rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled through the streets below. Adam and Luna found themselves talking more freely than they had in weeks. Stories of childhoods, past losses, dreams they never admitted aloud. Adam spoke of his late wife, of the last months in the hospital, of the fear that had haunted him since her death. Luna spoke of her father's expectations, Derek's constant shadow, and the pressure of the company resting entirely on her shoulders. For the first time, the barriers between them crumbled. The penthouse, once a fortress of control and performance, became a sanctuary of shared vulnerability. Adam realized that Luna's strength didn't come from power alone, It came from survival, from enduring a world that expected perfection and never allowed mistakes. At one point, the storm knocked over a small vase, sending water and flowers across the floor. Adam bent to pick it up and Luna's hand brushed his. The contact was brief, accidental, or so it seemed, but it left a jolt in both of them. "Careful," he said, straightening and handing her the vase. "We can't have anything breaking tonight." She looked at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I think some things need to break," she said softly, her eyes locking with his. The candlelight flickered across their faces, shadows dancing in the room. Adam felt a tension coil in his chest, a mixture of desire, caution, and curiosity. He had never been in a position like this, where the rules were both clear and meaningless at the same time. Suddenly, a loud crash of thunder startled them both. Luna grabbed the blanket draped over the couch and wrapped it around her shoulders. Adam instinctively moved closer, pulling the blanket slightly around himself as well. Their knees touched and neither moved away. The physical proximity was charged, intimate, and forbidden by the contract, yet the warmth of the blanket and the storm outside created a cocoon they couldn't escape. "Adam," Luna's voice was almost a whisper. "Do you ever regret agreeing to this?" He looked at her, considering the question. The truth was complicated. He had agreed to the contract out of necessity, to provide stability for his daughter. But now, wrapped in the storm, sharing this rare unguarded moment, he realized that the contract had brought him closer to someone he hadn't expected to care for. "No," he said finally. "Not really. I think it's changed me in ways I didn't anticipate." She looked at him, her expression unreadable for a long moment. Then she leaned back slightly, her shoulder brushing against his again. "Good," she said softly. "Because I don't think I can go back either." The storm raged outside, but inside, the penthouse was quiet. Their conversation drifted to lighter topics, teasing, small jokes, stories of ridiculous office mishaps. For the first time, Adam felt like he was seeing Luna not as a boss or a contract partner, but as a person. Someone who laughed, worried, and struggled just like anyone else. As midnight approached, the wind howled, shaking the windows. Luna's phone, used earlier as a flashlight, had long since died. Adam got up to retrieve a spare charger from the kitchen. When he returned, he found Luna asleep on the couch, curled slightly under the blanket. The sight struck him. Her vulnerability, her exhaustion, the softness in her features that no boardroom had ever revealed. He hesitated, then sat down beside her, careful not to wake her. For a moment he just watched, the weight of the storm outside contrasting with the rare stillness inside. In the silence he felt something shift, an unspoken understanding, a fragile trust that neither of them could name yet. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the room. Adam reached out instinctively, brushing a strand of hair from Luna's face. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. He let his hand rest near hers, close but not touching directly. The moment was electric, suspended between them, a promise of connection without commitment. The storm passed eventually, leaving the city slick with rain and the penthouse quiet once more. Adam stayed awake for a while longer, thinking about the hours they had shared, hours where performance was impossible, where control had slipped, and where the real people beneath the roles had emerged. When he finally went to bed in the guest room, he lay awake, heart pounding, thoughts swirling. He knew the coming months would be just as challenging, if not more so. Derek Sterling would not relent. The board would continue to watch. The contract would continue to dictate their actions. But for the first time, Adam realized that the real challenge wasn't surviving Derek or the contract. It was surviving the growing feelings he couldn't name, for a woman who wasn't just his boss, not just his contract partner, but someone who had unexpectedly become indispensable to him. And that was far more terrifying than any storm outside. The storm had passed, leaving the city slicked with rain and the streets shimmering under the occasional flicker of broken streetlights. Adam Bennett arrived at the Sterling Marketing Solutions building early, the cool morning air doing little to calm the knot of anxiety in his chest. Today was more than a meeting, it was a performance, a test, a gamble that could cost him and Luna everything. Luna Sterling was already waiting in the corner office, her hair perfectly styled, her suit immaculate. Her eyes met his as he entered, and for a moment, Adam felt the familiar tension, the mix of admiration, apprehension, and unspoken questions that always seemed to linger between them. "Morning," he said quietly, trying to sound casual. "Morning," Luna replied, her tone clipped but measured. She tapped her tablet against the glass desk. "The board meeting starts in 30 minutes. Derek has already called in a few members, asking them to review the agenda early. He's planning something." Adam nodded. He had expected nothing less. Derek Sterling was methodical, ruthless, and patient, a combination that made him a dangerous adversary. What's our strategy? Luna leaned back in her chair, her fingers interlaced. We act like we've always acted. Calm, controlled, professional. No hints of tension. Derek will look for cracks, for evidence that the marriage is a sham. We don't give him anything. Adam's stomach tightened. He knew she was right, but the pressure was suffocating. Their entire charade rested on perfect execution. One wrong move, one flinch, and Derek could destroy not just the contract but Luna's position in the company, and possibly Adam's life as well. Remember, she added, he's also trying to exploit any emotional connection between us. Stay focused. He swallowed hard and nodded, turning toward the door. Let's do this. The boardroom was a cavern of polished mahogany, high-backed chairs, and intimidating authority. The sunlight from the glass walls did little to warm the atmosphere. Derek sat at the head of the table, a smug smile on his face, clearly relishing the role of provocateur. Good morning, everyone, Gregory, the board chair, began. Thank you for coming on short notice. We have important matters to discuss regarding executive leadership. Derek leaned back, folding his arms. His eyes never left Adam and Luna, measuring, calculating. I'd like to begin by addressing a matter that affects the integrity of this company, he said, his voice smooth, deliberate. There's been some irregularities in leadership disclosures, specifically regarding Luna Sterling's personal arrangements. A murmur spread across the room. Adam felt his pulse quicken. Derek's opening move was bold but predictable. The board had to see the marriage as legitimate, but Derek's insinuations were designed to sow doubt. Luna remained calm. Her fingers tapped lightly against the table, a silent metronome of focus. Adam took a deep breath, reminding himself that their strength lay in their unity. Derek continued, detailing supposed inconsistencies in public records, hinting at financial arrangements, and carefully framing questions to imply deception. Adam listened, heart pounding, as Derek laid the groundwork for what he hoped would be a scandal. When the floor opened for responses, Luna spoke first. Her voice was steady, unwavering. Derek is correct that there have been unusual circumstances. However, these circumstances were driven by a contract clause in our father's will, a clause that requires the CEO to be married. It's an outdated, archaic rule, and my actions were intended to comply with it while protecting the company. The board members exchanged glances. Derek's expression tightened slightly, realizing that Luna's calm, factual delivery was countering his narrative effectively. Adam leaned forward. He had rehearsed this part only in his mind, never speaking in a room like this. I can attest to the fact that the arrangement was strictly professional, he said, meeting the eyes of each board member in turn. The contract was legal, transparent, and designed to ensure the company's continuity. Luna's integrity has never wavered. The only deception was forced by the archaic nature of the will, not by her actions or character. A few heads nodded subtly. Derek's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered quickly, the predator mask returning. Convenient, he said, his voice sharp. But Adam, surely you understand the optics. To outsiders, it may appear as a manipulation of power for personal gain. Adam met his gaze, unwavering. And yet the results speak for themselves. Revenue has increased, markets have expanded, and Sterling Marketing Solutions remains respected. If we judge leadership by results rather than by forced conditions, the truth is clear. Gregory leaned back, fingers steepled. The room was silent, tension thick enough to slice. Derek's eyes flicked between Adam and Luna, calculating, considering his next move. Then, almost casually, he reached for a folder. I've also obtained internal correspondence, he said, spreading papers across the table. Emails, schedules, and financial records suggest that Adam has been acting under direction, following a script designed to convince the board. How can we be sure this marriage is authentic? Adam's throat tightened. This was the moment where performance mattered more than words. He looked at Luna. She nodded subtly, her expression unreadable but reassuring. He stood. Authenticity isn't proven by paperwork. It's proven by action. For the past 3 months, I've observed Luna's leadership, her decision-making, and her dedication. She has acted consistently, ethically, and with integrity. The contract only outlines conditions that society has imposed, not the nature of the people involved. Derek's jaw clenched. He had anticipated attacks on Luna's character, but Adam's calm, principled defense was unanticipated. He shifted slightly, trying to regain control. Emotion clouds judgment, he said sharply. We're discussing business, not feelings. Adam's response was deliberate. Emotion informs judgment. Ethical decisions, loyalty, and commitment are all part of leadership. If we dismiss the human element, we ignore the qualities that make someone fit to lead. Luna Sterling embodies those qualities with or without the contract. The room went silent. A few board members exchanged glances, whispering under their breath. Derek's gaze hardened, realizing that his usual intimidation tactics weren't working. Adam and Luna had become a united front, their calm and measured responses leaving Derek without leverage. Then Gregory spoke, his voice decisive. We will deliberate. But I must say this testimony has merit. The board will review the contract clause and consider the context carefully. Immediate judgments are premature. Derek's face hardened. He wasn't used to delays. This is not over, he said, standing. The appearance of impropriety remains and we will investigate further. Adam remained seated, his heart racing. He glanced at Luna, who allowed herself the briefest of smiles. They had survived this round, but Derek would not relent. His calculations were relentless, his patience infinite. The meeting adjourned, leaving a charged silence behind. Adam and Luna walked out together, side by side, the corridor eerily quiet in contrast to the tension-filled boardroom. Not bad, Luna said quietly, her hand brushing against his arm. You were impressive. Adam shrugged, attempting nonchalance. I just spoke the truth. That's all I know how to do. Luna smiled faintly. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but it softened the severity of her usual demeanor. Truth is a luxury in this company, she said. You wielded it well. The next few days were a delicate dance. Derek's subtle investigations continued, questions whispered to board members, careful insinuations in casual meetings, veiled challenges to Adam's credibility. Yet every time Adam and Luna responded with calm precision, never breaking character, never allowing emotion to undermine their performance. Outside of the office, their personal lives began to blur. Luna occasionally joined Adam and his daughter at the park, learning the rhythms of a life she had never been part of. They shared small moments, laughter, jokes, and quiet conversations that had nothing to do with contracts or boardrooms. For the first time, Adam began to see Luna not just as an employer or partner in a legal arrangement, but as a person he could respect, trust, and care for. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Adam and Luna sat on a park bench watching his daughter chase pigeons across the square. Luna handed him a coffee, her fingers brushing his as she passed it. You're good with her, she said quietly. Better than I thought anyone could be. Adam smiled. She's amazing. She deserves stability, love, and someone who will fight for her. That's all I want. Luna's gaze softened, lingering on him for a long moment. I think she's lucky to have you, she said softly. They sat in silence, the city hum fading into the background. Adam felt a pull toward her, an unspoken connection that had grown through chaos, contract, and storm. For a brief, fleeting moment, he considered what it might be like to break the rules, to ignore the contract entirely, and let something real happen between them. But reality was relentless. Derek Sterling remained a threat, the contract remained binding, and the board remained a cage of scrutiny and suspicion. Yet even in the face of this, Adam felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the rules didn't have to define everything. As they left the park, Adam felt a subtle shift in their dynamic. The storm inside the penthouse had passed, but the storm outside, the storm of Derek, the contract, and corporate power, was far from over. And for the first time, Adam realized that surviving wasn't enough. To protect Luna, to protect his daughter, and to honor the fragile bond growing between them, he would have to fight, not just for survival but for something far more elusive: trust, connection, and maybe love. The week began with an unsettling calm, the kind that always precedes a storm. Adam arrived at Sterling Marketing Solutions earlier than usual, the city below washed in cold morning light. He paused in the lobby, the familiar smell of polished marble and office coffee grounding him. But grounding was only temporary. He knew Derek was planning something, and every instinct screamed that this time, the trap would be unavoidable. Luna was waiting in her office, reviewing reports with a calm efficiency that belied the tension in the air. Adam knocked lightly before entering. You're early, she said, not looking up from the tablet in her hands. I want to be ready, he replied. Today feels different. She finally looked at him, her piercing gaze assessing. It is different. Derek isn't just insinuating anymore. He's escalating. He's gone straight to the regulators, questioning financial transparency and suggesting the contract invalidates your position. Adam's stomach knotted. He had anticipated Derek's maneuvers, but direct attacks on their credibility and legal scrutiny were more dangerous than he had imagined. So what do we do? Luna closed the tablet and leaned back. We fight Adam. Not just in the boardroom but legally, strategically, and publicly if necessary. You need to be ready to defend not only your reputation but mine as well. Adam nodded. He had no choice. The clock was ticking and Derek's moves were deliberate, surgical. By mid-morning, Adam and Luna arrived at the conference room where the board and legal counsel were gathered. Derek was already seated, flanked by his two most loyal allies on the board, smug and confident. Adam felt the familiar prickling tension, the sense that the entire city could watch this confrontation unfold and only see the surface, the carefully curated illusion of corporate civility. Gregory, the board chair, opened the meeting. We are here to review recent concerns regarding executive transparency, contracts, and corporate governance. Derek, you may begin. Derek smiled, a predator ready to strike. Thank you, Gregory. The issue is simple. Luna Sterling has engaged in actions that compromise the board's trust. Specifically, her marriage to Adam Bennett was contracted for convenience, paid for, and orchestrated to influence perception. These actions call into question the integrity of her leadership and the authenticity of her decisions. He spread folders across the table, each marked with labels that suggested scandal: contracts, financial transfers, emails, personal communications. His eyes never left Adam. We have evidence of undue influence and potential manipulation. Adam's pulse quickened, but he held himself steady. Luna gave him a subtle nod, the silent signal they had developed over weeks of shared struggle. They would face this together. Adam spoke next, his voice calm but deliberate. Derek is correct that the marriage contract existed. It was legal, transparent, and fully disclosed to the board in our internal documentation. However, the purpose of the contract was to satisfy an outdated clause in our father's will, a clause that is irrelevant to my qualifications or Luna's ability to lead. The contract itself does not define our integrity or our capabilities. Derek's expression darkened. And yet, it appears that you were incentivized, that your financial stability was leveraged. Doesn't that compromise your objectivity? Adam met his gaze steadily. My financial stability was precarious, yes. But that does not compromise my honesty. I have acted ethically in every decision, in every recommendation I've made for the company. The results speak for themselves. Revenue growth, market expansion, increased employee retention. Decisions were made based on merit, data, and strategic insight, not contracts or obligations. A murmur passed through the board members. Derek's allies exchanged glances, their confidence slightly shaken. But Derek was relentless. We also have records indicating that Adam had access to internal files and directed communications to influence board perception. That's manipulation. Adam leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. Manipulation implies deception. There has been none. Everything Derek claims is documented, traceable, and can be audited. The files I accessed were part of standard operational procedures and transparency measures. No one has been misled except those who insist on seeing a personal matter as a scandal. Luna interjected, her voice controlled but sharp. The issue here is the clause itself. My father's will is antiquated, sexist, and irrelevant to modern business. The contract was a tool to comply with an outdated requirement while protecting the company. It does not define my decisions, my ethics, or my leadership. Derek's attacks are attempts to mask his own failings and seize control. The room went quiet. The tension was thick enough to taste. Derek's jaw tightened. He had prepared every argument, anticipated every defense, but the unified front of Adam and Luna was dismantling his narrative faster than he could respond. Gregory cleared his throat. We will review all documentation, but this testimony is significant. It challenges assumptions and highlights the complexity of the situation. Derek, your points are noted, but we must consider context, intent, and results. Derek's composure faltered for a split second. He had underestimated the clarity and precision of Adam's defense. But he quickly recovered. Intent does not erase the fact that a contract exists and financial incentives were provided. This is the definition of conflict of interest. Adam felt a flicker of anger but forced himself to stay calm. He leaned in and addressed the room. Conflict of interest exists only when actions compromise decision-making. There is no evidence that any decisions were made unethically or against the company's best interest. The only conflict exists in Derek's desire for power. Several board members whispered to one another. Derek's allies looked uneasy. Derek's smile thinned, his calculated calm cracking slightly. Gregory raised a hand to silence the room. We will deliberate on these matters carefully. The board recognizes the concerns raised, but it also acknowledges the clarity and professionalism demonstrated by Luna and Mr. Bennett. Immediate decisions will be deferred while we review all evidence. Derek clenched his fists under the table. This was not the final victory he had envisioned. The meeting adjourned, leaving Adam and Luna in a private hallway, a tension-filled bubble separating them from the chaos. Not over, Derek muttered under his breath as he passed, his eyes locking on Adam. Luna exhaled, the tiniest edge of relief breaking through her usual stoicism. We survived, she said quietly, her hand brushing against Adam's arm for the first time in a public, unguarded moment. Adam looked at her, realizing how much he had come to rely on her presence, her guidance, and her unexpected warmth. We did, he said. But he'll keep pushing. Derek doesn't quit. I know, she replied. That's why we need more than words. We need strategy, evidence, and trust in each other. Adam met her gaze. Trust had become an unspoken theme of their partnership, and perhaps something more. The subtle tension between them, once strictly professional, had begun to shift. Every glance, every shared moment outside the boardroom, the park, the penthouse, even quiet conversations over coffee, had built something fragile but real. Over the next week, Derek escalated further. He leaked minor details to the press, attempting to frame the contract as a scandal. Adam worked tirelessly, countering every insinuation with documented proof and measured communication. Luna's presence was unwavering. She accompanied him to interviews, offered insight, and shared small moments that humanized the narrative. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Adam returned to the penthouse. Luna was already there, seated on the couch with a cup of tea. She looked up as he entered, tired but composed. You're late, she said lightly, though her eyes betrayed concern. I needed to clear my head, he admitted, sinking onto the couch beside her. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the hum of the city below filling the room. Then, without warning, Luna reached over and placed her hand over his. The contact was brief but electric, a spark neither of them could ignore. Adam's throat went dry. Luna, he began, but she shook her head slightly. Not yet, she whispered. Not words. Just presence. It was a moment of unspoken understanding. Between the pressure, the corporate battles, and the ongoing charade, they had found a fragment of truth in each other. A connection that no contract, no clause, no boardroom could define. The next day, Derek made his boldest move yet. He filed a formal challenge with the company's legal team, claiming the marriage contract invalidated Luna's authority and demanded an immediate review of her executive decisions. Adam and Luna met with counsel, combing through every document, email, and record. They prepared defenses, mapped arguments, and rehearsed testimonies. Derek's attack was aggressive, but Adam realized something crucial. Derek's power lay in perception, not reality. If they could demonstrate integrity, transparency, and results, Derek's campaign would crumble. That night, as Adam lay in the guest room, he thought about the weeks they had endured. The contract, the charade, the boardroom battles, it had all brought them closer, not as boss and employee, but as two people fighting for justice, dignity, and something more profound than either had anticipated. The question lingered in his mind as he drifted into restless sleep. When the contract ended, what would remain between them? For the first time, Adam feared the ending of a contract not because of the business consequences, but because he had come to care. The morning of the final board meeting arrived with a gray sky over the city, a cold wind sweeping down the streets like an omen. Adam adjusted his tie in the lobby mirror, rehearsing his statements one last time. Every ounce of tension in him pulsed like electricity. He knew this was the day everything would either fall apart or come together. Luna arrived shortly after, her composure flawless, though Adam caught a flicker of unease in her eyes, a human trait she rarely allowed herself to display in public. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod as they entered the glass-walled boardroom together. The room was crowded with board members, legal counsel, and a few select executives. Derek sat at the head of the table, exuding a confidence Adam no longer believed. Gregory, the board chair, opened the meeting. We are here to resolve the concerns regarding executive leadership, transparency, and corporate governance. We will hear from both parties, review evidence, and make a final decision. Derek, you may begin. Derek wasted no time. Thank you, Gregory. The matter is simple. Luna Sterling's authority is compromised due to the contractual marriage with Adam Bennett. This relationship was orchestrated to manipulate perception, influenced by financial incentives. The company cannot tolerate such breaches as they undermine the integrity of leadership. He gestured to the folders before him. I have proof of the payments, the timeline of Adam Bennett's involvement, and internal communications suggesting collusion to maintain appearances. Luna Sterling may be competent, but her decisions are tainted by this arrangement. Adam took a deep breath. He felt Luna's hand brush his under the table, a silent reminder that they were in this together. He rose, every eye in the room now on him. Derek is correct that a contract existed, Adam began, his voice steady, precise. But the existence of a contract does not define integrity, competence, or leadership. This contract was a temporary solution to an outdated, archaic clause in a will, one that should never have interfered with corporate governance in the first place. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The company's success under Luna's leadership speaks louder than any personal arrangement. Revenue growth, market expansion, employee satisfaction. These are tangible results. Decisions were made based on merit, strategy, and dedication, not on a contract. Derek's claims are based on perception, not reality. Murmurs spread through the room. Derek's allies shifted uneasily in their chairs. Gregory cleared his throat and gestured for Adam to continue. There is more, Adam said, pulling out a folder from his briefcase. Derek has attempted to claim manipulation. Here is documented evidence showing that all actions I took were within legal bounds and standard operational procedures. Every email, every file accessed, every recommendation made is traceable, transparent, and ethically sound. Derek's attempts to frame this as misconduct are baseless. Derek's jaw tightened. And what about the financial incentives? The debts paid, the contract itself? Surely that creates a conflict of interest. Adam met his gaze evenly. Financial stability does not compromise ethics. It does not make my judgment flawed. If anything, it allowed me to perform my duties without distraction, ensuring I acted in the company's best interests. The conflict exists only in Derek's perception, which is clouded by ambition and resentment. Luna stood, her presence commanding the room. Let me be clear, she said, her voice unwavering. The contract was a response to an outdated rule. My leadership, my decisions, and the company's performance are independent of that contract. Derek's campaign is not about ethics, it is about seizing power. And anyone looking objectively at the evidence will see that. The board members exchanged glances, some nodding subtly. Derek's confidence wavered for the first time. Gregory leaned forward. We will need time to deliberate on these points, but the evidence presented demonstrates clarity, transparency, and competent leadership. Derek, your concerns are noted, but we will not allow personal ambition to overshadow the company's well-being. Derek's hands curled into fists under the table. He had underestimated the unity and precision of Adam and Luna's defense. His carefully crafted narrative was crumbling before him. After a tense hour, Gregory reconvened the room. The board has reached a decision. Derek Sterling will be removed from his position on the board for ethical violations, including breaches of privacy and misuse of executive access. Luna Sterling will retain her role as vice president and will continue to oversee the company. The marriage contract between Luna and Adam Bennett is hereby dissolved, as it was purely a temporary legal instrument. All parties are expected to move forward in good faith. A quiet wave of relief washed over the room. Luna exhaled, a tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding leaving her shoulders. She turned to Adam, her eyes softening. We did it, she said quietly. Adam smiled, feeling a mix of triumph and exhaustion. Yes, we did. Later that evening, the penthouse was quieter than usual. Adam had moved his things out, the contract officially concluded, but he had lingered, unsure of how to step back into the rhythm of his old life. Luna entered the living room holding 2 cups of tea. She handed one to him, and they sat in silence for a moment, the city lights below reflecting in her eyes. So, now what? Adam asked, his voice tentative. The contract is over. The terms are gone. Where does that leave us? Luna looked at him, the mask of executive control softened by genuine vulnerability. That's entirely up to us, she said. No rules, no obligations, no appearances. Just us. Adam studied her, the woman who had once been untouchable in her glass office, now sitting beside him with a hint of uncertainty, and it drew him in. He realized that over the past year he had come to care for her, not as his boss, not as a contractual partner, but as someone who had become indispensable to his life, to the life of his daughter, and to his own heart. I don't know what the future looks like, he admitted. But I know I don't want to walk away from this, from you. Luna's lips curved into a small, hopeful smile. I don't either. And I've spent too long pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm tired of contracts defining what I can want, who I can be. Maybe it's time to start fresh, real, honest, without conditions. Adam reached across and took her hand. This time the touch was deliberate, warm, and unguarded. The electricity between them, once restrained by professional boundaries and legal terms, flowed freely. I think, Adam said softly, we could be good at this. Not pretending. Not performing. Just us. Luna's eyes glimmered. I think so too. The city lights sparkled below as they sat together, the weight of the past year slowly lifting. There was uncertainty ahead, of course, as there always would be, but for the first time they faced it together willingly. A week later, Adam returned to his apartment with his daughter. She looked up as he entered, eyes bright. Daddy? Did you win? She asked, bouncing on her toes. Adam knelt and hugged her tightly. We did. Daddy and Luna won. The bad guy didn't get his way. Her laughter filled the room, pure and unfiltered, and Adam felt a lightness he hadn't known in years. That evening he received a message from Luna. Can we meet? Just us, no boards, no contracts. Coffee? He smiled, typing back immediately, yes. I'll be there. When they met, Luna looked relaxed, casual, and approachable, completely different from the commanding executive she had been in the boardroom. Adam felt a flutter in his chest he hadn't felt in years, a reminder that sometimes, the most profound connections come from unexpected circumstances. Ready to start over? Luna asked, her voice soft but steady. Adam took her hand in both of his, the city bustling around them, irrelevant in that moment. More than ready, he replied. And for the first time in a long time, Adam felt like life wasn't about surviving or contracts or debt or corporate battles. It was about living. Together. They walked along the quiet street, shoulders brushing, hearts synchronized in a rhythm of trust, care, and budding love. The past year had tested them, shaped them, and ultimately brought them to this moment, their own story written not on paper but in choices, courage, and connection. The future remained unwritten, but for the first time Adam and Luna were eager to write it together.